Hi, I'm Wayne Turmel. I am the co-author, along with Kevin Eikenberry, of the new updated edition of the Long Distance Leader Revised Rules for Remarkable Remote and Hybrid Leadership. And I'm looking forward to my conversation with Phil, but the best advice I ever got was actually from my old man, who taught me when I was learning to drive that sometimes three rights make a left. And the reason that matters is that sometimes going the direct route or the fastest route is also the easiest way to get yourself into an accident. And sometimes it's better to take the long way around and be safe and get where you're going. So that advice has always stuck with me.
Three rights sometimes make a left. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So how old were you, Wayne, when he gave you that?
Probably learning to drive, 15, 16.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So how have you used that in your leadership at all?
All the time. Sometimes it's very easy. I mean, to put it back in the driving analogy, the fastest way is to make a left turn, but oh, by the way, it's 4 lanes of traffic and no light. You know what? It's easier
Let's
to
make a
just
right.
go around the block.
There you go. That's awesome. Yeah.
And the same is true. The same is true with people. Not everybody is prepared to take the risk. Not everybody is prepared to take the direct route, and that's okay. What matters is you arrive safely at your destination.
Yeah, that's true, right? Focus on the end, not so much about the process, and you'll get there eventually, sometimes faster even. So with that, you guys wrote the revised rules for remarkable remote leadership. So why revise it? What's changed? What's different now?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. It's funny, when the original Long Distance Leader came out, it was 2018. And everybody was like, oh, you guys are so far ahead of the curve and edgy. And then COVID hit in March of 2020. And, tens of thousands of people found the book useful and helpful. And we helped a lot of people get through that crazy time. But 6 years later, a couple of things have changed, and it's really in 2 categories. The first category, of course, is technology has changed. When the book came out, Zoom was not a thing. It literally was not a thing. It was a free program that big companies didn't use, and that, and then suddenly COVID hit, and it went from what's Zoom to a verb.
Let's Zoom.
To a syndrome where everybody has Zoom fatigue in like 18 months, right? And also tools like Slack, and particularly Microsoft Teams. We were still talking about Skype for Business.
Yeah,
when
that's right.
we wrote the book. And while you don't want to get tied to the technology too closely, because that's just the tool that you use, right? What tool you use is less important than that you use one. For credibility's sake, we needed to update it. More importantly, as the diaspora kind of ended and people were deciding, are we going back to the office? Are we not going back to the office? What are we going to do? It became clear that there was no roadmap. The genie's not going back in the bottle. Most of what people call hybrid work is actually not hybrid work. It's a hostage negotiation. and be sure what's going to be next. They're trying to navigate it. And so too many people are trying to go back. Like none of that ever happened. And so what we try to do with the second book is say, hey, the stuff that was true always about leadership is still true. The things that are true about purely remote leadership are still true. And if you stop and think and are intentional, you can create this new hybrid way of working and avoid some of the pitfalls that we're finding in the return to office kind of experience.
Very good. Very good. So with that, the return to office is happening more and more and more. We're seeing that they're offering that, but we're still having hybrid, right? We're still having hybrid. So
Well, yes. Again,
how do we make that work? How do we do
well,
that?
the first thing is to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. I said jokingly a moment ago that most of what we call hybrid work is not. It's a hostage negotiation. And here's what I mean by that. A hybrid, if we're being all scientific and biological and stuff, a hybrid is two things that create a third thing, right? A horse and a donkey
Oh, right.
create a
Yep.
mule. A mule is its own thing. I mean, mules are mules. They are not horses. They are not donkeys. They are mules, right? Most of what we call hybrid work is just kind of a smush. It's how much can we make them come back to the office before they quit? And how much can we whine about going to the office before they fire us? And so we settle on 3 days a week, and that kind of works, and we move forward. But are you getting the absolute best from that? So
Gotcha.
let me give you a really common problem. So we're in the office 3 days a week, and some people say, I can't get any freaking work done. I'm trying to get my work done. I got my head down. People are popping their head over the cubicle like a meerkat. There's Alice's birthday, so there's cake in the break room. There's noise everywhere, and I can't focus. And then when I work from home, I'm on Zoom meetings from morning till night. And so it's this constant compromise of trying to figure it out. Now, what if we were more intentional about what work gets done where? Right? The 3 days that I'm in the office, it's a pretty good bet that I'm not going to get as many tasks checked off my list and as quote unquote as much done. But the talking, the brainstorming, the building relationships, the problem solving, all of those things, so that on the days when I'm not in the office, I can focus on stuff that I need to focus on.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes truly hybrid work. It's not just what work happens where, but real hybrid work draws in the notion of time. It's what work gets done when.
That's a big shift, Wayne. That's a big shift, man. From what
Yeah.
work gets done where to what work gets done when is a massive shift. So how do we start flipping the brain? What's the first kind of thing that we need to do in order to make sure that we can change that brain cycle? Because that is a massive tectonic shift.
Well, it is, but here's the thing. We are in the middle of a tectonic shift. We are in the middle of the most seismic change in the workplace, probably since the 1920s and 30s. In the 1920s and 30s, we got the 5-day week and the 40-hour work week and the concept of commuting and going to the office. And so when you were in the office, you owed your boss your time because they're paying you for that time. But when you were off work, that was your time. In a world of always connected and a world of always on, do those rules still apply? What does it mean to have work-life balance? Right. So there's all these questions, all these the responsibility of what do I owe my employer and what does my employer owe me beyond a paycheck are all being examined and studied and changed, and nobody really knows what's going on. So we're in the middle of this chaos. What we're suggesting is, yeah, we're in the middle of this chaos. There's a couple of things you need to do. On a personal level, how is this impacting you? What do you want? How are you going to choose to navigate this? Is part of it. But the other part is, as a business, what's the right answer? And a lot of companies think they know the answer. It's like, well, we're going to have them come in 3 days a week. Well, if you have stated your job is to have the absolute best, most qualified human beings working for you, and you're insisting they come into the office 3 days a week, you have basically said, we need the most talented, capable human beings who live within a 20-mile radius of the office.
Right.
Right. So are you, in fact, really looking to expand your talent pool?
Probably
So
not.
it's really important. And we lay out a number of questions and some ways of thinking, not just in the updated long distance leader, but especially in the long distance team book, where, okay, stop, think. What is the business you're in, right? How do you serve your customers? What is the best way for that work to get done? Can you track the workflow? Where are the things that need to be done co-located or at least in the same time zone? I mean, one of the things is, yeah, you can work anywhere you want, but we keep East Coast office hours. So we expect you to be logged on from 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock, and God help you if you're not there. That may or may not be important, depending on your work, depending on the job that you do and how you serve your customers. But is it really when the best work gets done? Does it really matter? Right? If I'm writing a report that is due Friday, do you really care that I do it between 9 and 5 East Coast time, or do you care that it is done to the best of its ability when it's due?
There you go. Yeah, that's a big question, right? That is a big question. And how do we shift that as a leader? How does that change our role as a leader, Wayne?
Well, it changes our role as leaders in a couple of ways. First of all, micromanagement is not only frustrating and whatever, it's actually impossible. You cannot short-term micromanage somebody when they work remotely without going all the way to monitoring keystrokes and all kinds of things. And then you can go on Amazon right now and you can find a Bluetooth mouse for your computer that actually jiggles the cursor every 5 minutes. And it is designed purely so that your computer and whoever is monitoring it thinks you're working. I mean, we all know every draconian management law in the world has a workaround, and somebody has found it.
Yeah. Yep.
So if you're focused on metrics like, are they logged on time, like how, you know, do they pick up the Teams message, do they respond right away, or is there a gap? Right? If those are the things that you're measuring, you're going to get this kind of uh, malignant compliance.
Yeah. Wow.
Whereas if the expectations are clear, if people have access to the resources so they can get their questions answered, they can get the information they need, they can reach whoever they need to reach in order to get their work done, and the work is judged accordingly. And that means getting feedback when it's not up to snuff. It doesn't mean just leaving them alone and praying that the stuff is in your inbox when it's due. Right? There's coaching, there's delegation, there's some people need more performance management than other people need, while allowing for trust and individual work styles and all of that good stuff. But we're in the middle of this chaotic time, and it's really hard. I totally empathize with people who are frustrated, and people have said to me, well, when is this going to change, right? When is the world going to accept that there's this new way of working? And it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while. I mean, what it's going to take, frankly, is we're going to need a breakout company who becomes the model that everybody can point to.
That
right?
makes sense.
When
Yeah.
some company that we've never heard of suddenly takes over their market and they work in this new way, people are going to go, aha, we want to be like them. Right now, there isn't really a bright, shining example that people can point to and say, we want to be like them. What we're doing is looking at existing companies and going, we don't want to be them. And negative examples are not great. If you're a parent, you know, negative examples are not terribly motivating.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So, how do we build that trust, Wayne, remotely? That's a big question. You've got a whole chapter in the book dedicated to this. How do we build trust remotely?
Yeah, trust is different than faith. Okay, so
Okay.
first of all, I mean, whether we're talking spiritually or we are talking in the workplace, faith is I choose to believe this. Trust is evidence based. Trust can be shaken, trust can be built because it's based on evidence. So we need evidence, right? Which means check ins and metrics and KPIs and people volunteering information and communication flowing. In the book, we have a model which is basically a three-part model that says trust consists of three things. The first thing is, do we have a common purpose? Are we there for the same reasons? Are we, do we know what we're doing and why we're doing it? And this is true, by the way, in your personal life, in your work life, whether your team is located together or not. In your personal life, if you meet somebody and you decide, hey, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, and they say, yeah, this is great, I don't think we need to go there right now.
You're probably not going to get married. Yeah.
Over time, trust then becomes an issue, right? Because you don't have the same end goal in mind. You're not aligned in what you're doing. I'm not saying it can't work, but it makes it harder. And suddenly unexplained absences matter. And if they don't answer the phone right away, your brain starts to go places, right? So we need to be aligned. And interestingly, that's the one that's least impacted by distance. The other two factors are I can't trust you if I don't know that you're competent, right? If I give you an assignment, I have to believe that you are capable and of doing that job to the standard of which I need it done. So, okay, how do we get that evidence? Well, metrics, check-ins, coaching, are assignments met on time? Are people participating in meetings? Because that way you know whether or not they're engaged and paying attention. Just because they don't speak up doesn't mean they're not. But if somebody never speaks up on a meeting, over time, I'm going to start to wonder. Right?
Yep.
And the final thing is motivation. Fine, I know you can do the job, but are you engaged? Do you care? Do you put in as much effort as the next person is going to put in? And again, we need evidence of this. And when the evidence is there and the evidence supports our belief in, you assume positive intent, you have faith that people are going to do what they're going to do. When the audience confirms your faith and trust, it builds that trust, and trust is there. You can have all the good intentions in the world, but if somebody is constantly disappointing you over time, that starts to be corrosive. And then it becomes, I trust Phil because I've known him for a million years and he always does good work. And so I don't worry. But the new guy, I don't know. And he just blew an assignment. So clearly he's an idiot and doesn't know what he's doing. Well, no, but I have no social capital built up with that person. Whereas I have tons of social capital built up with Phil. So if you are aligned and you know you are aligned, and there is evidence to that effect, and the person is competent and clearly competent, and the work is getting done, and it's getting done to the right standard, and the person is exhibiting the right amount of engagement and enthusiasm and working well with the team, and it's clear that they are energized and engaged, what's not to trust? If any of these are out of whack, you need to start examining where is the gap and how can we work to establish enough evidence that that trust can be rebuilt.
Yeah. So how do we get more evidence? Is it as simple as just time and output, or is there more to it, Wayne?
Well, what is it we're measuring, right? The fact that somebody shows up on time and doesn't leave till the day's over is nice. It's kind of a floor level bar. But we all know people who show up on time, sit at their desk, play nicely, and don't accomplish a darn thing. So clearly that's not a metric that is important. It's really important that whatever metrics you set, that they be set so that both parties understand why those metrics matter, how we're going to measure them, what it means when we achieve them, and what it means when we don't. And all of this has to be discussed. It can't just be assumed, and it can't just be implicit. When you're recruiting somebody to work remotely, you need to have conversations about what does your day look like? Right? Do you need to take the kids to daycare in the middle of the day? Or do you need to, what does your day look like? And make sure that aligns with what you need from them.
So we can't just pretend that they don't have a life outside of work, Wayne?
No, that was the old model when the minute they walked into the building, their life ended and they were yours for 8 hours until they left. Right?
Yep.
There are companies that work that way. That's one of the reasons for going back to the office. I mean, Amazon has said that's it. No more remote work. Everybody back in the office. Well, it's funny. Some of the world lost its mind, right? That happened. Hey, am I going to tell Jeff Bezos how to run his business?
Probably
I don't
not
think so, right? Here's the thing, though. If you look at Amazon's business, it's a 20th century horse and buggy model. There's stuff in the warehouse. It needs to be delivered. More stuff comes to the warehouse, and then that needs to be delivered. That is a very in-person, tactile kind of business model. Right? Most of Amazon couldn't work remotely if it wanted to. What you're talking about is a small percentage of the admin and marketing and those types of folks. And by having them come back to the office, there's an estimate that 15% of those people are going to quit. Oh, look, we're planning a 15% cut in force anyway.
Right.
So Amazon is perfectly free and within its rights and probably correct to do what it's doing. In 2 years, when they're having trouble recruiting the people that they want to recruit,
right,
will they re-examine this process? And that's the thing. Everybody that's come down with these really draconian back to work rules, for the most part, has either re-examined that 18 months, 2 years in, and lightened the reins a little bit, or there is a buttload of stealth remote work going on. Stealth remote work is, my kid has a cold. I need to work from home today. Stealth remote work is, I'm really heads down on this project. Can I work on this at home where I'm not going to be interrupted? And this was all going on before COVID. And now we're kind of going back to it because people are pretending like that never happened and we're going back to the before times.
Right.
as leaders, we need to know, okay, if you're going to play these reindeer games, I still need you to be on that meeting. I still need you to be engaged. I don't care where you write this report. It better be good. It better be right. And it better be on time.
There you go. That's right. And that totally makes sense. And that should be hopefully no different than it is in the office.
Well, it's funny. When the first book came out, the harshest criticism and the best feedback we got on the book were the exact same thing, which is, this is mostly a book about leadership, and then kind of tailor that for remote. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Because leadership is leadership. What we found during COVID is the leaders who took their job seriously, and you all know who you are. If you're watching this, you're probably one of these people. You knew what you needed to do as a leader, and you figured out how to make it work.
Yep.
For some people, it was easy. For some people, it was natural. For some people, it took brute force and working way too many hours and taking the hits and burning out. But we figured it out because you started with this idea that to be a leader, this is what needs to happen, and the rest is details. The harsh criticism was, well, this is just a leadership book. Yeah, well, if you're looking for a magic bullet, remote work is not exponentially more difficult than leading in person, but it is different, and the differences matter. Let me give you the worst example I can think of. My wife was working remotely as a salesperson, and she was fired by instant messenger.
Oof.
Yeah, that is the correct response, right? Oof is the correct response. But two things to do here. First of all, you can go, oof, did the job. She was unemployed at the end of the interaction. I mean, technically, the task was accomplished, right? Now, I'm willing to bet any sentient human being listening to this story has a pretty good sense of where this guy is on the leadership scale, right? Which is really, really low. This guy was a steaming, bubbling, horrible human being. And distance allowed him to be even more horrible because the technology allowed him not to have to think like a real leader or like a person.
Wow.
So a good leader would have found a way to do that. I had to do that 100 times in my corporate career because I always had remote people, and sometimes you have to have hard conversations with them. Well, you can do that, whether, at the beginning of my career, it was a telephone call, and sometimes you got in the car and you drove, and sometimes you just got on a webcam, but you know that those conversations are webcam conversations because you need them to be as rich as they can be. You need to see the person's face. They need to see yours. You need to watch their response. They need to see your body language. A good leader, somebody who cares about leadership, instinctively knows that. Yeah. Somebody who's just managing and has Fire Wayne at the top of their to-do list is going to do that as painfully and quickly as possible, and probably not in the best way.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great example to end us here, Wayne, because there's so much that we could talk about, so much there. We have to know that even though we're remote, we need to be as rich as possible in the interaction that we have for the most important things. If we're giving a performance appraisal, if we're firing someone, if we're doing those things. But where do we get started, Wayne? And before I let you answer that here, the kind of the first step or two, I want to encourage folks to go to worklife.com/LDL. Get some additional resources. You get a free chapter of the book. You can get copies of the book there. They've got some bonuses there laid out for you. That's longdistanceworklife.com/LDL for long distance leader. So Wayne, give me the first step or two that people need to take in order to get started with this.
The first step, again, is what work needs to be done by whom and where and when. Right? If you can identify those, it starts to become pretty clear, oh, this needs to be done synchronously. This needs to be done when we're all together. This piece of it, not so much. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there is a model in the book. And if you go to that site that Phil just told you, there is a chance to download 25 tips from the book. And the model is in those 25 tips. If you don't want to spring for the book, you cheap weasels. But you can, it's not even our model, but it talks about richness versus scope. Some communication purposes require face-to-face, if possible, at least webcam to webcam. If it's Alice's birthday, you don't need to go to each person individually and say it's Alice's birthday, right? A Slack message, an email, whatever gets the job done. All our communication is on a balance of richness versus scope, and it all depends. We all have the technology. We have all the technology we need. If technology stopped tomorrow, we would be able to function for a very long time if we are thoughtful and intentional about how we use it.
Wow. That's a great way to take us home, Wayne. We already have all the tech we need if we're intentional, thoughtful about the way we use it. So, folks, if you're not convinced yet, I want to convince you. Go get a copy of the book. It's full of great stuff. Wayne and Kevin do a great job of laying out so much good stuff in there. I've read the first edition. I've read the second edition. They're not that drastically different that you're going to change the world, but they are different enough that you need the second edition. So get a copy of it, longdistanceworklife.com/LDL. This has been Wayne Turmel, Phil Gerbishak coming to you. Wayne, as always, it is a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for writing this book and for sharing all your knowledge